Welcome to Vishnu IAS Academy. We are excited to announce the launch of our new courses. Contact us for registrations and counseling. Hard work never fails. Keep learning.
Good morning, everyone. So we are back with our current affairs discussion. Again, we are going to discuss a range of topics covering from GS paper 1 to GS paper 3. Okay. So first topic is here, cleaning the Yamuna, a story of missed deadlines. So why is it in news? It is in Delhi edition of our newspaper. You might not be finding in our Hyderabad edition or any other edition. Delhi edition has been printed. So the context is that the National Capital Region Planning Board has again set a deadline of cleaning Yamuna for the year 2026. And it is said that this planning is going on, but we are not cleaning Yamuna. Do you know when did this plan for cleaning Yamuna started? Way back in 1993. Some of you must have born in that particular year. Okay. That is first Yamuna Action Plan. Okay. Particularly it was focused upon creating infrastructure for sewage treatment plants. Okay. And the deadline set was year 2000. The deadline was not met. Okay. In 2003, it was declared as the first phase of Yamuna first action plan has been completed with construction of few sewage treatment plants. Okay, it was planned with the collaboration with Japan government. Okay, you can understand the status of in 1993 economic condition is very poor. We definitely require some outside help. In that context, the Japan government has come up for us, right? And then 2003 they declared that we are going to start second phase of Yamuna action plan. Okay. And then the second phase went beyond of building sewage treatment plants, but also talking about construction of effluent treatment plants for removing the discharge of industrial waste. Okay. And then going ahead to talk about grazing awareness. Okay. Include private players in the cleaning up of rivers. All these things have been included, but this phase has been continued till 2011, and then it has declared that second phase of Yamuna action plan has been completed, but it has missed certain targets which were set. Okay, I'll tell you what is the scenario when we talk about the whole aspect of Yamuna pollution. Okay, and then recently after this new government has been created in 2014, and they realized that in 2018 we need to have a separate plan. Okay, third Yamuna action plan, third phase. The deadline is 2022. So now pandemic is there. They have realized that pandemic closure of industrial units and all, there was some cleaning of that river happening. But anyway, after the lockdown has been lifted up, we are again seeing the discharge of sewage, industrial waste, all these aspects, especially from Delhi region, NCR region. So the planning board of National Capital Region has set a new deadline now. We are going to clean up river to ensure zero discharge. Okay, both sewage and industrial waste. Okay, 2026. So the question is, are we able to achieve this or not? So what is the present scenario of our, tell me, what is the present scenario of our Yamuna pollution? There are few interesting facts that you need to remember also while you write any answer, or even if you can point out these aspects when you write an essay also. Water scarcity. Whenever the topic comes with regard to water scarcity, you can specifically talk about this Yamuna river or Ganga river. Oh, anyway, Namami Gange program is there. Yamuna is tributary of Ganga, so it is very much important to clean Yamuna in order to clean that Ganga, right? So let us come into the geographical aspect of Yamuna first before, that is the basic thing that we need to learn. So what is the origin of Yamuna? Tell me. Yamunotri Glacier. Okay, where it ends? Prayagraj or Allahabad. Okay. So in how many states does Yamuna pass? 3 states. Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand. Is there any other state? Okay, it passes through 4 states, but 1 union territory. Okay, prelims question can be framed. How many states does Yamuna form? They might be creating some statement, and you might find it out. Like you'll find that Delhi will also be included, and you'll think that it is 5 states through which it is passing, but it is actually 4 states. Okay, very small section of Himachal Pradesh. I thought you guys won't be specifying Himachal Pradesh, but you were correct, but you forgot that Uttarakhand also passes. Okay. Okay, it reaches this Allahabad or Prayagraj is in Uttar Pradesh itself, right? And then what are the tributaries, main tributaries? If you are frequently in news, at least 2 tributaries you will be able to tell with regard to interlinking of rivers. Betwa and Ken. These are 2 rivers. And then Chambal is there. Okay, Son will be meeting Ganga at Patna, near Patna. Okay, it is not a tributary of Yamuna. And Sindh is there. Chambal, and then the tributary of Chambal itself is Banas. Okay, and there is one more important river. Here it is Hindan. Okay. Tributaries are frequently asked in our prelims aspect also, but whenever you are writing an or else your mains answer representing Yamuna river is also very good. So that examiner while he'll be writing, while we reading your aspects, he'll be knowing, okay, you understood the geography and where is the problem with Yamuna is, and the importance of Yamuna for cleaning Ganga itself. Okay, that is the geography. Is there any important dam that we need to know about that important? Find out. There are several of them. Okay. At least 1, at least 1, 2, 3 you need to remember, because in prelims match the following kind of questions might be coming. Okay. Let us now come to the Yamuna story, Yamuna pollution scenario. Okay. So what is the scenario now? So it is observed by some researchers said that between 2 places, that is Wazirabad and Okla, this stretch of Yamuna is about only 22 kilometers. Okay, it constitutes only 2% of the length of Yamuna. It is the most polluting region. That this is present in Delhi itself. 76% of pollution that the Yamuna carries is coming from this section. So specific, specific kind of diarrhea, vomiting sensations, and you should be knowing that until unless this diarrhea medicine has been invented, most of the people in the world have died because of diarrhea only. Okay, it is so trivial that it is the most serious disease or infectious disease which was present before the invention of any kind of medicine or this discovery of ORS, oral rehydration solution, right? That is one of the things which was prescribed for controlling diarrhea. Anyway, so next, it was planned that there should be about some aspects of sewage treatment plants, but that was not planned. Okay, what is the sewage generation, especially from Delhi? It is about 720 million gallons per day. And the sewage treatment capacity that Delhi has is only about 595. Okay, and out of this, only 80% of this capacity is being utilized. So the Yamuna Action Plan 1, we have created sewage treatment plan. Anyway, now they are outdated also. So the amount of funding which is required, the amount of planning which is required to build the sewage treatment plants has not been up to the mark. So it is more sewage, the more amount of sewage is being discharged. You might see that it is very near, no. Even a small amount which can be reduced, we need to take care of them. Same thing with goals. See, industries also, we have established, there are what do you say, planning and measures taken, policy designed in order to ensure that the industries will set up effluent treatment plants. But in and around Delhi, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, you will see many of these illegal industries running. Leather industries, one of the main thing. Textile industry. Illegal industries, which discharge waste directly into the Yamuna. Even though there were specific guidelines and there is no any enforcement body which is going there and checking. These are illegally present. How they shift. Okay, if this place is not feasible for them, they'll just carry out and shift to other place so that the person who is coming to examine the existence of those illegal industries will not be able to find. These are small. They operate in that fashion. They run the industries illegally. So effluent treatment plants which are required to reduce the discharge of industrial waste, that process and planning has to be more apt. In that sense, the Delhi government itself has told, when Arvind Kejriwal has won, he has said that we are going to clean Yamuna. That is why we were brought into the government. So even then, he has not been able to. That is one of his, probably one of his promise which he could not fulfill, probably. Yeah. And then, what about this unorganized living in Delhi, or else the slum dwelling areas? What about these people? They also create pollution. It is said that almost 1700 unorganized colonies are present in Delhi. Okay, 1700. And they directly discharge their fecal waste into the Yamuna river. Who will go there? How will we set up sewage treatment plants? And it was due to those 3 plants, almost 500 colonies are being provided with sewage treatment plants. But it is long from done. So having these unorganized colonies itself is creating trouble. So they need to find a solution for it rather than focusing on creating sewage pipelines, sewage treatment plants for these unorganized colonies. No? It is difficult to identify these unorganized colonies. So the problem of increasing unorganized colonies or slum dwelling in Delhi should be addressed in a different way. Right? This actually can be considered as a piecemeal approach. Matlab, a solution, a problem, a solution, it is not a clear solution. It is just like outside solution for. What else can you find? Are there any other reasons that you can find that the pollution of river? There are several. For any answer you write, the sources of pollution or causes of pollution for river, you will write many answers. What else can you think? These are administrative reasons. There is also a political reason. I told you river Yamuna is passing through 4 states and 1 union territory. Definitely there is water disputes will be there, states. Right? There is an Yamuna water agreement between these states and union territories. And that was signed in the year 1994. It is said to be reviewed in the year 2025. Okay. So these people want water. Each state will demand water. No one will back off. So when we come to this review of this agreement, will state governments will take the responsibility to ensure that there is an ecological flow of water in the Yamuna. It is said that 23 cusecs of water in lean season is required. This Cusex flow of water is required in lean season to ensure that Yamuna will replenish itself. Water has its own, river has their own cleaning capacity, right? The cleaning capacity, the ecological flow of Yamuna should be ensured. And then when we are having this kind of agreement of water sharing between the states, will the state governments will come together and ensure that they will leave certain amount of ecological flow? It is highly improbable, no, but not impossible, because the populations are raising, there is a high raising demand, but however, somewhere down the line, we need to ensure an alternative way of utilizing water or producing water. I think in 2018, there is an essay called Alternative Technologies to Climate Change. You should find the problems here and then provide a solution there. What are the alternative technologies available in order to ensure that water availability is there for people? We will not become someone like Cape of Good Hope. They are selling water there, no? We have seen the history there. The history of water scarcity in that particular area in South Africa. So, now the question comes, how are you going to address this? Alternative technology solutions are very much required, or natural way of, think of bioremediation. Right, these aspects you need to mention. Administratively, definitely, we need to have a strong board which will take things into action, and it should be independent from political interference. Otherwise, every time the funds or the functionaries will always be, stopped or blocked in their functioning. Right? This is the story of Yamuna deadlines. Definitely, for Ganga to get clean and all, Yamuna is also very important. Right? It is an important source of water for irrigation, important source of water for drinking, for cooking, okay, and also for industrial purposes. Definitely, industry should talk about what is called as cyclical economy. Cyclical manufacturing processes should be ensured. The water which is being wasted by them should be recycled by themselves and reused. Such kind of facilities, alternative technologies we need to think about. And policy initiatives, like recently government has brought in what is called as production link subsidy schemes, right? For manufacturing, for MSME sectors. Yeah. Within that scheme, why can't we include the aspect of having a circular and production linked industrial economy? Circular economy, we need that circular economy. That policy should be into our documents in every time. Right, we'll talk about production linked scheme in a separate section, okay, in detail. What was the previous way the government used to go ahead in promoting industrial growth, and why is it now it is linked to production? There is something called as dwarfism of MSME sectors. Okay, we'll talk about that aspect later. Okay, let us move on to the next topic. It is from GS paper 3. Okay, account aggregator, a new framework for sharing the financial data. What is it? Account aggregator. Have you heard of this in the news? You must have heard, but anyway, this is actually an intermediary data repository, okay, which will share the financial data between the financial institutions. What will happen is, a person A, Mr. A, will go to a bank A. He'll ask for loan, but this bank doesn't know the creditworthiness of this person. In order to know the creditworthiness of this person, it wants all the financial data that this person has. So it will go to the account aggregator. Okay, give me the data of this particular person. And this account aggregator will be collecting information from several financial institutions, not only just banks, okay, which are present under this person's name. Okay. and they will share. And this will passed on to this bank, and this bank will then decide whether to accept or reject his demand. So why is this required? No, we are for safety. See, banks are reeling with NPA crisis. They cannot afford to give loans which will turn into bad debt. This person can be a willful defaulter, like people like or Vijay Mallya, right? Nirav Modi is not a willful defaulter particularly because he was using letter of credits, letter of certain what do you say, documents to misuse and raise funds. That was not particularly willful defaulter, but Vijay Mallya is the one who is a willful defaulter. Yeah, that is what. So this is completely different from that thing. Okay, that is what I want to come about. See, there is something called as, so this is okay. Through this action, they are going to find the creditworthiness of this person. But previously, what is the procedure that we had is CIBIL score. Okay. This score used to be the one which will be decided by the use of PAN. Okay. But however, this PAN data, from this PAN data will be collected only from the large amounts that are going to be transacted. Very small amounts are going to be missed. Okay, that is how the data is coming from the CIBIL score. Okay, only the PAN data. But the financial aspects of this particular person will not be relied only on this PAN. He might have invested in some shares. He might have invested in some mutual funds. Right? That kind of financial data of that particular person is also required to decide whether that person is a creditworthy or not. So there is a limited data that is being used, Once we have financial institutions, means it is not just the banks or any other thing. Mutual fund units will be there providing the data. Okay, all these aspects. Many things are there, no? Chit funds. So all this information can be collected in this account by this account aggregator. Okay, that is the difference between these two things, which is very much required. Okay, what will it ensure? For banks, it will ensure the creditworthiness assessment of this person can be done easily, quickly, right? So that they will not be entering into something called as non-performing assets situation. They will be more, vigilant in that aspect. What else? This data can be used to create what is called as specialized product for each individual, the financial product. Some person requires certain kind of financial product, The small farmers might require different financial product in order to ensure that financial security. A big businessman requires different kind of product. So if this data is provided, different segments can be understood and different products can be put in. Now we are seeing different kinds of products coming up. Like what? With the investment planning coming up, or the pension scheme, Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandan Yojana, something like that. Different, for street vendors there is separate pension scheme. For unorganized sector there are separate pension schemes. For people like farmers there is another pension scheme. Like government itself is deciding, but it can go even more. People specific products financial products can be deployed by having that particular data. Right? But however, what is the risk involved? What are the risks involved? Data, of course, data security, data theft. So proper encryption mechanism has to be placed. See, when you make one particular area as the thing which is holding this data, it is more easier to attack that particular area, no? We need to have a decentralized way of storing that particular data. Are there any scientific advancement that took place? Other than code completing, we have some new way of storing data. Storing data at a near place itself. I particularly don't remember the particular term, but there is a new way of storing data. Okay, it is not like cloud way of storing data where one particular area only they will be storing. No, different locations they can store data and then use it there itself. And it is more difficult for any person to misuse them. So in that way, proper encryption mechanisms have to be placed, and data theft, and of course the data protection bill, which is not yet been passed, has to be passed. And then RBI anyway said that the financial data of this country will be staying within the country. But how about the financial institutions which are coming into our country through FDIs and all? How will we manage that? Policy should be more clear. Of course the idea is good, but the policy architecture with regard to account aggregator and the participation of private players, how will they be acting in that particular aggregator? Okay, will it be completely a public limited company or public company, or should we include private players also in this while building this account aggregator? Because they also are, many private players are there, many banks are there, private sector banks are there in our country. They need to have a role to play in that while building that account aggregator, right? So it should create a level playing field for all the banks or financial institutions without favoring anyone or any particular bank. So in those aspects are there. Those are the challenges with regard to this particular account aggregator. Okay, we'll move on to next one now. The aspect of tribunals. It was in news, no? But for prelims point of view, it is very important for us to revise. But anyway, what is the trouble with tribunals right now? Not just chairmen, just the appointments of the person. Tribunals are created in a separate way in the sense that, see, in Supreme Court or High Court or District Court, these are just judges. Okay, they follow what is called as law, but sometimes they won't be understanding the technical aspects of certain things. They are not specialized in IT sector or any other sector, or how will the car works. They might not know that particular machine part or anything like that. So, the tribunals were designed not to ensure both judges both judges as well as technical members are ensured in that bench while deciding a case. So it is what? Tribunals are more far ahead, or else they are better placed in providing justice to the people. Better placed, if not the worst. Okay. So what is the aspect now? The aspect is that several tribunals, okay, especially with regard to National Company Law Tribunal, which is very much required to implement this insolvency and bankruptcy code, and debt recovery tribunals which are required in order to ensure that NPAs in the public sector banks will be reduced. All these are facing troubles because of lack of appointments. In fact, it was said that debt recovery tribunals have become non-functional. So the people who are accessing these tribunals, of course, justice delayed is justice denied. So they are facing troubles, and what is happening is that people are traveling to places, different locations, so that wherever that particular tribunal is having a bench or people sitting there, they are going there and filing the case rather than having something which is very nearer to them. If they are not finding any bench sitting here, they are going to different locations. So it is becoming a costly judicial adventure for people. Not just access to justice, it is judicial adventure for people. Does access to justice should become an adventure? No. It should be as simple as possible. So it is part of Article 21 also, right? Access to justice. And even DPSPs will also talk about access to justice. I think Article 38A or 39A, check those things. Okay, but anyway, we will talk about tribunals also. So it is being said that center is having a, cherry picking things. So there is something called as search and selection committee, which is headed by Supreme Court judge itself. The tribunal members are searched and selected by these committees. Okay, there is robust procedure that is ensured. It was said that for one particular tribunal, the judge has travelled across the country and he has interviewed more than thousands of people and decided a list. and center is picking them only few, 2 to 3 from that particular list. So what is the need for having that robust procedure then, right? So the cherry picking nature of the central government, because ultimately it is the central government is going to a point which is causing little delay and also troubling Supreme Court. Now Supreme Court has given a directive that within 2 weeks you need to finalize, and if possible it is good that central government will respond, but most probably it won't be responding, I am sure of it. Anyway, let us go on with the basics of these tribunals. So are these tribunals part of the original constitution? So when was it introduced? 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act 1976. Okay, introduced 2 articles. Introduced a new chapter actually. Okay, part 14A. In this, it consisted of 2 articles, Article 323A, Article 323B. Okay, why do we require 2 separate articles for tribunals? Tribunal is tribunal. Anyway, this is for setting up of administrative tribunals. Okay, this is for rest of the cases. So there are slight differences between the article. Okay, this is specifically for public services, for dealing with the disputes related to recruitment, conditions of service, public services like All India services and all. Okay, but however, one thing which we need to remember is there are few exceptions here. Certain public servants are not included. They cannot be their disputes cannot be brought into this administrative tribunal. Okay, those are members of defense forces, right? Article 34 of fundamental rights. 34 talks about martial law. I think Article 33 of fundamental rights. So there can be restrictions on enjoyment of fundamental rights to army personnel, police. All these aspects are there in that particular article itself. Okay, so members of defense cannot raise aspects of troubles with regard to disputes related to their recruitment, their conditions of service. Okay, they cannot reach the administrative tribunal. They have separate mechanism, I think. Okay, and then officers and staff of Supreme Court are exempted, of course, and then staff of Parliamentary Secretariat. These 3 are exempted. These 3 public services are exempted. Okay, if at all prelims question come, if you just remember them, you will be able to eliminate few options and pick them. There are exceptions here. So all other public servants, okay, will be coming under this. And then the Central Administrative Tribunal can be established by Parliament. Okay, and the person who is going to appoint the members is President. Okay, and they are going to be given the status of a judge of a High Court. Okay, status of a judge of a High Court. And then the chairman will have a tenure of 5 years or 65 years of age, whichever is earlier, and other members will have the age limit of 62 years. Okay, this is how the central administrative tribunals are there. But however, what about state administrative tribunals here? Here, state administrative tribunals are also established by center itself. It is not state legislature or state government which is going to establish. That is the main point here. It is going to be established by center itself on the specific request of the state. Okay, and then if 2 or more states are asking to set up an administrative tribunal, there can be a joint administrative tribunal also. right? Understand that particular aspect only. That is the main difference that we need to understand. But anyway, what about this Article 323B? Here not only Parliament but also state legislature can establish tribunals in what aspects? In dealing with aspects of taxation, okay, problems related to export import, okay, and then what else? Labor, industrial disputes, labor disputes, many things, several aspects. The state government and parliament both will have the power to establish tribunals in dealing with these aspects. But for for administrative tribunals, only the parliament will have the power to establish the administrative tribunals. Okay, on specific request of state administrative tribunal can be established, and then in specific request of two or more states, joint administrative tribunal can be established. Right? So these are the preliminary facts that you need to understand. So both there is a search and select committee which is present. Anyway, you need to remember them, which is headed by chief justice, not just justice of Supreme Court. There are several other members, but chairman will be justice of Supreme Court only. Chairman of that search and selection committee. Okay, he will be searching the members and then recommending these members to the central government, and the president will be appointing. But here is the thing that even having that robust process, the center is cherry picking. They are delaying the appointments, and center is also having separate some plans also. No, previously we have observed that central government has removed certain tribunals from existence through particular law. Yeah, there are few tribunals which the central government has removed. I think it was in news in March or April. So it is trying to somewhat, there is proliferation of tribunals, that is what this government is saying. There is proliferation of tribunals, and we need to reduce that proliferation of tribunals in our country. They are trying to do something, maybe what is the interest of the Supreme Court as well as the central government is always difficult to decide for us about. Okay, they'll have each one has separate agenda, but we need to know what is the agenda of each person properly, so that we'll be able to deal with this particular problem of tribunals that we are facing now. Okay. These are the basics related to tribunal. Let us move on to next one. This one, E-Shram. What is E-Shram? Have you guys seen it in news or anywhere? It is related to unorganized sector only. What are the schemes that we are having for unorganized sector? Recently, government during lockdown also it has released very. MG Narega, is it for in one way? Yeah, very good. That is to create employment to the people. Okay. Recent ones. MG Narega 2005, 15 years back. Stay contemporary. So tell me, who are unorganized laborers first? Who do not have set of goods and regulations? No. That is what the trouble here, okay? Defining who are these unorganized laborers is a very complex thing to do. And that is creating trouble in implementing various social sector schemes for central government as well as state government. There is a law which was passed in the year 2008. One second. Unorganized sector, I think Unorganized Social Sector Act or anything. What is that act? Unorganized Sector Social Security Act. Unorganized Sector Social Security Act 2008. Under this act, there were certain provisions which empowered both the state and as well as the central government to take specific measures in order to ensure the welfare of this unorganized sector workforce. Okay, and then in regard to that aspect only, central governments have been taking several of measures. For example, in 2013, manual scavenging has been legally been removed, right? Manual Scavenging Act is there. Rescue Rehabilitation and 2013 Act is there. Manual scavenging has been completely prohibited, but at the ground it is still persisting. Legally we have just removed and we have provided an access to justice to those people. Right? In those aspects. And then recently I told you Pradhan Mantri Shram Yogi Mandan Yojana, the pension scheme for the unorganized sector. Several of them, if they can contribute certain amount of money every year till they get into age, and then they will receive 3,000 rupees pension after they cross 60 years. Some kind of social security. Then there are, Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Suraksha Bima Yojana, all these are also there for unorganized sector. Accidental insurance, life insurance schemes, right? 12 rupees, 330 rupees per year insurance schemes are there for these people. So in that aspects only, that was done in 2015. So after this particular act only, several of these reforms with related to providing social security net to unorganized sector is coming up. And now this, anyway, in future, this act is going to be subsumed into social security code. The 4 labor laws that we are going to have, code on wages, code on industrial relations, social security code. Okay, this act is going to get subsumed into this particular code. Okay, that is of the future topic. Now tell me, who are unorganized laborers? Ministry of Labor itself has categorized, Ministry of Labor and Employment has itself categorized laborers into different things. Like based on occupation, it talked about, it includes the laborers of small and marginal agricultural laborers, even the landless, the weavers, bead makers, all these people will come into this, artisans. And then by nature of their occupation, they are bonded laborers, or are they migrant laborers, or they casual laborers, contract laborers, these will also be included in this. And then specifically with regard to danger aspect of their particular job, these workers will do. For example, scavengers, rag pickers, taddy toppers, these all people will be coming there. Okay, what else? Sector wise also you can think of, agricultural sector is massive. The most informal sector in our country is agriculture sector only. Okay, and manufacturing, agriculture and construction combinedly provide employment for 150 million people in our country, approximately. Each one contribute, taking the equal share, 50 million. Okay, also if you can include this aspect of trade, transport and restaurant also, include them also. You'll see, truck drivers, are they included in any kind of formal employment or anything? No. They'll drink whole night and drive the vehicle. Very informal nature of their, no one is going to check whether they are drunk or not. Right? Very informal nature of this economy, and the important aspect here is this informal sector contributes to 50% of our gross value addition. Its contribution to our economy is very huge. So it will become a minimum responsibility of the central government or the state government to provide social security for these people, and also include domestic workers, midwives. These are also included in this informal sector. They are having what is called a seasonal nature of their work. They are not having permanent works. Their works are seasonal. They migrate and come back. They earn through daily wages. Right? There is no assured income for them. If they find work, they will have an income. So how are we going to provide social security for these people? That is the complex nature of the sector itself. 90% of his workforce is coming from this sector. 90%. 90% of workforce in India, according to periodic labor force survey. Okay, it is not my data. Almost some 45 crores, I can say. Okay, in that probably 38 crores is from informal sector. So how many people are paying taxes now? That aspect is also there. No, these people are not the taxpayers for our country. If you make them properly included into our formal system of employment, then only they will be coming into the tax bracket. So our tax base is very poor. So how can we improve our direct tax collections in our country? We need to find a way. Anyway, so this is the aspect of this unorganized sector. But what is this eShram? This is nothing but a portal which creates a national database of unorganized sector workers. Okay? It is estimated that almost 350 to 420 million workers in unorganized sector will get registered. So, what are they going to get benefit from this registration? They are going to be included in Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bhima Yojana, 2 lakhs accidental insurance. That is how they are attracting people to get registered, okay? And the author who has written, K.R. Shyamsundar, has said that this kind of carrot is not enough. This carrot is not enough for these people to get registered into this national database for unorganized sector. Okay? And then definitely it is going to improve the coverage of these people to get included into social security schemes in our country that are present there. This data will be better used by the central government to reach to the people. Right? And then definitely, like I said, the database for account aggregator and all. Specific social security schemes can be designed. Of course, the trouble lies, the aspects of challenges, several challenges will lie. What can be the challenges here in implementing this? Anyway, one thing is that it is a delayed response from the central government. That is what the author also told that. See, we have brought this act in the year 2008 and that has took more than 10 years to bring it in such kind of data. This data is required in order to create, the database is required in order to provide better welfare scheme to the people. So it has to, that is what it is saying. Now they are facing the trouble of identifying the people properly. The inclusion exclusion errors will be seen, in any particular kind of scheme. Inclusion exclusion errors. Some people will be left out, some people will be included, who should not be included. Those kind of errors, in order to rectify those kind of errors in our governance system, this kind of databases are very much required. Then what are the challenges that you can talk here? What are the challenges? So this eShram specifically mandatorily said that Aadhaar is required for registration. Aadhaar itself is having several issues now. Many people in Northeast are not having Aadhaar card. And most of them you will find they will be working in unorganized sector in many ways. So Aadhaar itself is having technical troubles where verification of a particular person's Aadhaar is being troubled. We have seen these reports coming up. So is it a right way to make sure that only Aadhaar is the way to get registered? No. We need to have multiple registration points. Offline registration, why only online? eShram. We have established common service centers in our rural areas. Why can't we use them? Ultimately, they are going. Mostly people are coming from rural background only, That is one particular aspect is there. Okay. The other issue. Third is data protection or data security. These people are Unorganized sector people are illiterate, they lack digital awareness. What is the tele density of our country? It is almost 88%, and rural tele density is only just 60%. And how is it measured? It does not talk about the broadband connectivity or anything, the mobile handset that we are holding. So internet means only mobile, having a mobile? No. Having access to internet and this digital literacy or aspect is also includes the aspect of having a better broadband connection there, which is more cheaper in fact. But we are talking about tele density now. Where is the broadband density? We do not have the data. Proper data. Okay, data protection in while we are not having a proper data protection law, how can we ensure that data protection can be ensured? And then in order to run several schemes, the central government will have to share the data that they are collecting to the state governments. So again that is going to create some kind of federal tussle between these two people. They will talk about we need this data, central government will say that I won't be sharing this data. For any kind of political reasons or some particular reasons. Again that is going to create a trouble. Centralized data where it is central government which is going to decide how the data will be used by the state governments is something against federalism. Right? Data protection as well as data usage. As I said, digital literacy is another problem. What else? Behavioral aspects, yes. Same thing goes with that account aggregator also which we were discussing. It is the consent of the people which is required in order to share that financial data. So financial information of a particular person is very dearer to any person. Will he be open to give up his data, to share this data? No, same thing will happen to this anyway. One way they will counter it by saying that they are digitally literate, so we can use their data. That is how the government has responded while the judgment related to, the case related to Aadhaar has been in lower people do not have, they do not enjoy right to privacy or anything, we can use their data. That is what the government response was there while Aadhaar issue was in Supreme Court. Okay. Exclusion of certain people is there. One of the problems that was identified this author. Exclusion. So the people, all the workers who are already included in the EPF or employee state insurance schemes, employment provident fund schemes, they are going to be excluded, and most of the people are having contract employment. So excluding them, will it be able to, that is what the aspect of complex nature of defining the workforce of unorganized sector. How can we define people, these people will be excluded, these people will be included, and there is age discrimination also. People above 59 years of age are not required to be registered. So they have already worked previously. Unorganized sector people are not going to have any kind of pension or retirement pension or anything. They are still going to work in some or the other way as long as they have the energy within them. So excluding those people, it is definitely a age discrimination. So that is being excluded in this eShram portal. Age discrimination. And Social Security Code talks about the hazardous factories workforce. It talked about people who are working in hazardous factories and included in state employment, state insurance act or this employment provident act will also be excluded. Who are the people who are working in other hazardous factories and all? Mostly unorganized sector only. People are getting employed and they are fired whenever it is done. So including them in inclusion of these people in these particular schemes and then excluding them in here does not make sense. That is the problem with regard to this particular scheme right now. What about gig workers? How will you define these gig workers now? That itself is a problem, but anyway, how will you include them? It's very difficult. Somewhere, a person who is having a formal employment will be having some kind of free time job as a gig worker, as a Uber driver, or he might be included in formal employment. But there are certain people who are not having any employment and they completely rely on this gig economy. How will you differentiate these people and include them in this eShram portal? There can be some inclusion exclusion errors. So clear policy definitions are required. That is what the other is saying. Clear policy decisions, and we can talk about triple linkage of one nation, one ration card. Okay, and then eShram, and then voter card, to better identify the workers of unorganized sector. Okay, that is what the suggestion that he has made. Okay, and proper grievance redressal mechanisms have to be made. If a particular person has not been included, his grievance of not being included should be rectified as soon as possible. Right? And of course, focus on digital literacy. Ensuring that, okay, having just a mobile phone saying that that person is digitally literate is a poor way of saying that he is a well-aware person. No. Even though we are having mobile phones and using them, most of us do not know what is happening internally. What will be the case of these unorganized sector people then? So these are the challenges and these are the recommendations. What the author has been saying. You can talk about in a way that unorganized sector. Ultimately, the problem of unorganized sector has to be addressed. Right, making this economy more and more formal is one or the other way we need to go about. But agriculture is one of the biggest challenge. It is the sector which is having the most informal nature. It is more complex and informal. But there are political reasons where agriculture cannot be made into a formal sector, unlike USA and all. That is why we are seeing a lot of productivity and production growth in countries like USA and now presently China. The informal nature is one of the reasons why our agricultural production has not been picking up the pace. We are increasing production how in agriculture sector? How are we increasing agricultural production? It is not the production per hectare that is increasing. Of course, that is increasing at a meager level. That is where we need to focus upon. But agriculture sector is increasing by increasing the land for agriculture. Okay, that is one of the reason. If we increase the land, more agricultural land will be brought in and production is increasing. But production per hectare is very low compared to China or any other Southeast Asian country also, some of the Southeast Asian countries, and even Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is very good at producing tea. Per hectare production of tea in Sri Lanka is very good. So in that way, in one or the other way, we need to find the solution for unorganized sector as a whole. Okay, these are required as a transitory. In the long run, we need to focus upon addressing the problem of unorganized sector as a whole.
As author said, offline registration offline leads to the corruption.
Offline registration might lead to corruption, but common service centers are the centers in rural areas where people themselves know that these are informal, like these people are having land. We need to place the right people there. Of course, aspect of corruption will be there. That is why we are talking about grievance redressal mechanism. So that has not been clearly portrayed in this particular aspect. Grievance redressal mechanism. Okay. Now let us move on to the last topic. We'll quickly finish it. Behind the great internet shutdown. Tell me, how do you define internet shutdown? How do you define internet shutdown? Social security. No. Come out of your. So it is an intentional blocking of internet communication or flow of information through internet. Intentional blockade to specific area or specific section of people. That is how we can define internet shutdown. Okay, when you're writing an answer, you need to interpret things like, okay, how will I define internet shutdown? You need to think about these things. Okay, how will I put this internet shutdown in a proper way, defined so that I'll be able to extract answer from that particular point. When you define this particular thing, everything is clear for you. You'll be able to answer most of the things on your own. But supportively, you need some data to support your arguments, that is enough. You'll write a very good answer there. Okay? Temporary or intentional disruption of internet communications, internet-based flow of information to a specific section of people or specific area is what is called as internet shutdown. Not just all the internet communications are being shut down, but partial shutdown of internet is also there, no? Facebook is blocked in China, that is also partial way of blocking internet. So these are also should be included in your definition while you write an essay or any definition of this particular. That broader aspect of your defining the particular aspect is very much required. Okay. So what is the context here? About not just Kashmir. There is a Supreme Court judgment in the year 2020. Anuradha Basin case. Supreme Court said that right to information even via internet is part of fundamental right. Right to information, right to access information even via internet is a fundamental right. And any restrictions on this access to information should be legitimate, rational, temporary and proportionate and according to law. These are the words, specific words which are told by the Supreme Court. And even then the internet shutdown events are still happening in India, and it is said that last year there are almost about 129 internet shutdown cases. And few Jammu Kashmir and then Delhi and Haryana in order to prevent during farmers protest and all. Internet shutdowns events took place, and then even then it is said that right to access information is actually very important even via internet. So any restriction should be based in order to ensure public safety or national security. Other than that, there should not be any kind of restrictions on access to internet. And this aspect has been told by UN also. Okay, International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights, Article 19 also talks about this. UN has specifically told that access to internet in any circumstances should not be restricted, because various aspects of existence of life are depending on internet. So, but what is the rationale given by any government in order to support internet shutdown? Any rationale? What are the reasons? Internal security or national security in a broader way, not just internal security. Sovereignty and security of the nation is an ultimate aim of any nation. So any aspect which the government feel that they are nationally secure or threatened, they might impose such kind of things. What else? To prevent the spread of fake or false news, especially during time of protest, there can be some kind of misinformation about the central government or any other administrative office can be passed on, right? Which might create trouble for this, which might become the reason for internet shutdown. And one more reason is that they will say that it is a preventive measure. We are taking it as a precautionary step in order to prevent any kind of protest in future. These are rationale given by the people. Like some or the other way they will talk about cross-border protection also. like there is some security threat coming from Bangladesh or Myanmar anywhere, they'll impose internet shutdown in the northeast or Jammu Kashmir, these Punjab regions. So that these people will not be communicating with each other, and there will be a, what you say, they'll face a trouble in threatening military, security wise. But these are the reasons rational given, but there is a huge impact or huge criticism coming up in order to, in respect to this internet shutdown. So what are these aspects? Can you think of any economic impact of internet shutdown? Fast, we'll finish. Service sector, yeah. Transportation sector depends upon communication through internet mostly. Transaction, e-payments, they are reduced. The ITC industry depends on internet. The confidence of this ITC sector will be lowered and business investments will be poor. The atmosphere of business investment, especially in IT sector, which is the most contributing sector to our economy. And it is said that approximately in the year 2020, 2.9 billion is the cost to our GDP because of this internet shutdown. Okay. Anyway, tell me the political impact now. Right to protest is a basic right for any person in our country. So if we create a hindrance through internet shutdowns and all, it is detrimental to our democracy itself. What is India's rank in democracy index released by Economic Intelligence Unit? It is ranked 53rd, but it was claimed or criticized saying that it is a flawed democracy. Basically because of these aspects only. Right to protest of the people is being restricted. Right to movement of these people is being restricted. And right to assemble peacefully in internet. We all people have this Google Duo or this group calling. This is right to assemble peacefully. If you interpret it in that way. These rights are being restricted because of restrictions put on access to internet. Right? What is the social impact now? Tell me. Quickly. Communication we talked in economic aspect also. Same thing you are repeating again. Access to education and healthcare internet is possible nowadays. In order to achieve our sustainable development goals, that is what the social impact will be. And it will be, most vulnerable sections, lower economic sections or lower socio-economic background people will be most affected by this internet shutdown cases. Okay? What is the ethical impact? Tell me now. The government restricting people to express their views talks about the trust that the people will place on this government. People's confidence on this government will be lowered if such kind of harsh measures are taken. Right? Public trust as well as public confidence towards the government can be hindered. And there is something called as telecom rules which were amended in the year 2020. Okay. And then the government mentioned that maximum days, number of days that the internet shutdown will continue is 15 days or 2 weeks. But Supreme Court directive has come by then, which said that they should specify the reasons why they are restricting the internet access. And then that amendment rules, the central government did not include that particular aspect, that we need to declare, central government need to declare the reasons for imposing these restrictions. That kind of provision has not been included in that amendment, but they have restricted they included the amendment saying that we will restrict the access to internet only for 15 days. It cannot be more than that. So that kind of improper application of this judgment will create some kind of trust deficit among the people against the government. Okay? That here we'll end, okay?